History Uncovered presents The Last Stand of an Emperor, Maximilian and Charlotte's Vanished Dream. In the mid-19th century, a dramatic and poignant chapter of history played out on Mexican soil, featuring two European figures thrust into an unfamiliar world: Maximilian of Habsburg, an enlightened Austrian Archduke, and his devoted wife, Charlotte of Belgium. Born into the aristocratic circles of Europe, Maximilian spent his early years overshadowed by the influence of his older brother, Emperor Franz Joseph I of Austria. Nevertheless, he always dreamed of leading in his own right, longing to enact forward-thinking policies. The grand opportunity arrived in 1864, facilitated by French Emperor Napoleon III and a faction of Mexican conservatives who believed that importing a European monarchy could unify their country, severely fractured by civil war and social unrest. Mexico, at the time, was a battleground of ideologies. Liberal forces under President Benito Juárez clashed with conservative elites eager for a strong central ruler who could bring stability. But seeing Maximilian's progressive reputation and refined charm as assets, they summoned him to assume the Mexican throne. Maximilian deliberated, torn between a love for his Austrian homeland and the enticing prospect of shaping Mexico into a modern state. Ultimately, Napoleon III's assurances of military support and the promise of a new empire proved irresistible. Charlotte, possessing formidable intelligence, political savvy, and a deep affection for her husband, supported his endeavor wholeheartedly. Thus, in a grand ceremony, the couple was proclaimed Emperor Maximilian I and Empress Carlota of Mexico, marking the beginning of a short but storied reign. Upon their arrival, they made their residence at Chapultepec Castle, a palatial estate perched on a hill overlooking the vibrant capital. Excitement filled the air as Maximilian and Charlotte introduced a series of ambitious reforms intended to foster educational opportunities, expand infrastructure, and protect the rights of the often marginalized indigenous communities. Determined to avoid aloofness, Maximilian would walk through market streets, converse with locals, and personally arbitrate disputes, believing that a direct connection with his subjects was essential for true reform. Meanwhile, Empress Carlota tirelessly managed court life, receiving Mexican dignitaries, diplomats, and foreign representatives while passionately advocating her husband's vision. An intelligent polyglot, she maintained correspondence with European monarchs, hoping to secure broader support for their fledgling regime. Her elegance and sincerity won over a portion of the Mexican elite, yet many remained uncertain of their foreign rulers. Behind the veneer of pomp and optimism, however, trouble brewed. The ongoing conflict between liberal forces, loyal to the exiled President Benito Juárez, and conservative factions backing the monarchy threatened to boil over. Juárez's government considered Maximilian an illegitimate usurper, propped up by French bayonets. While Napoleon III had promised robust French support, he soon encountered his own difficulties in Europe. Mounting pressures at home and a shifting geopolitical climate led him to withdraw most of his troops, leaving Maximilian and Charlotte exposed to the hostility of Juárez's forces. Still unwavering, Charlotte decided to embark on a perilous voyage back to Europe in 1866 to plead for renewed assistance. She traveled first to France, where she begged Napoleon III to honor his commitments, and then to the Vatican, where she made an impassioned appeal to Pope Pius IX. Tragically, her pleas were met with icy dismissal and diplomatic evasion. The emotional toll of these rejections proved unbearable. Charlotte's once indomitable spirit crumbled, and she spiraled into a state of mental anguish and paranoia. She refused to eat food not prepared by her own hand, believing herself surrounded by conspiracies. Ultimately, she retreated into a secluded existence within European palaces, never returning to Mexico, her dreams of empire shattered. Maximilian, profoundly shaken, yet unwilling to abandon the nation he had begun to cherish, soldiered on. He dismissed advice to flee, certain he could still unify Mexico. Nevertheless, the liberal tide surged. After the grueling siege of Querétaro in 1867, where Maximilian and his loyal generals heroically fought but found themselves outnumbered, Republican forces under Juárez captured him and demanded an end to foreign rule. Despite fervent appeals from European aristocrats, intellectuals, and even relatives in the Habsburg line, Juárez refused to spare the emperor's life. Many historians argue that Juárez sought to symbolize Mexico's sovereignty and discourage further foreign intervention by applying the law without exception. Thus, on a still morning, June 19, 1867, Maximilian faced a firing squad on the Cerro de las Campanas. Pale yet composed, he offered forgiveness to his captors, sending final words of love to Charlotte and expressing sorrow for the bloodshed endured by his adopted country. With that volley of gunfire, the fragile empire disintegrated, leaving a haunting legacy. Maximilian's admirers viewed him as a noble figure, tragically undone by betrayal and realpolitik. His detractors saw him as a hapless puppet in a game of imperial conquest. Meanwhile, Charlotte lived on in Europe, consumed by her memories and delusions for many decades, locked away in an endless mourning of what might have been. Their story persists as a uniquely tragic episode in modern history, illuminating the high cost of lofty ambitions at odds with entrenched local politics, global power struggles, and the unrelenting march of nationalism. In Mexico, the memory of Maximilian and Charlotte endures as both a curious chapter of monarchical rule in a republic's timeline and a cautionary tale about the perils of foreign intervention. For the rest of the world, it remains a heart-rending reminder that even with the best intentions, towering dreams can collapse beneath the weight of unforgiving reality.